Dr. Sumana, Director General of the UdM, who is joining us online from Limoges in France. Thank you for being here, Dr. Sumana, this morning. Ms. Tanzila Sanko, Head of Environment UNDP, Mr. Mego, Environment Officer from the Ministry of Environment. Dear colleagues, dear students, all protocols observed, I welcome you to this half-day workshop, which is being held today in view of the national consultation for the Stockholm Plus 50, which is being held today at the University Mascaragne. So we're going to have a full half-day session in the morning. So we are going to start this event by speeches from delegates from the UNDP and from the Director General and also from the Ministry of Environment. So without any further ado, I will call upon Ms. Tanzila Sanko, who is the Head of Environment of the UNDP, to please come over to deliver her speech.
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to see students here in large numbers because I know the difficulty. It has taken me to get here, and I really, really want to appreciate you all to be here today in order to participate in this consultation. Dr. Rahat Krishna Sumana, the Director General, I think pleased to be here. He had requested that I physically come. I wanted to participate online, but then I had to do everything possible, reschedule my meetings to be here physically. Mr. Mago, our usual partner, the Environment Officer, Ministry of Environment, Solid Waste Management, and Sustainable Development, staff members, students of the university, ladies and gentlemen, our coordinator who have put all of this together, I really want to recognize you and say thank you for doing that. I'm pleased to be here on behalf of the resident representative who would have loved to be here but unavoidably absent. And I'm pleased to welcome you all to this consultation session that is being organized as part of the series of consultations we have in Mauritius in the context of preparing a report on Mauritius with regards to advanced national and sectoral policies that have been put together to address climate change and leverage nature-based solutions, including the NDCs, green economy, the SDG frameworks, the national biodiversity strategies, and action plans. All of these have to be consulted for us to be able to have this one report, which will be discussed at the international meeting that is scheduled for June this 2020 in Stockholm, in celebration of the 50 years of convening the UN Conference on Human Environment in Stockholm. I wish to extend our warm thanks to the Vice Chancellor of the University to have promptly accepted to collaborate with the UNDP and the Ministry of Environment, Solid Waste Management, Climate Change, and provide support for the organization of today's event. The Stockholm Declaration was adopted on the 16th of June in 1972 by the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, which was the first document actually that has recognized the interconnections between development, poverty, and the environment. 50 years after that, we still have been increasing environmental challenges, growing inequality affecting development and well-being. The global community comes together in June to reflect on the urgent need for actions to address these interconnections. Climate instability, biodiversity loss, chemical pollution, plastic waste, rising toxicity are unprecedented challenges right now, which are faced with humanity. By negatively impacting health, reducing capabilities, and limiting present and future development opportunities, these challenges are increasing human insecurity. You may all agree with me that inequality is also evident in the use of natural resources that we have, where economic benefits and environmental and social burdens are unevenly distributed across countries and regions. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a choice. We have a choice to continue down the path of the last 50 years, characterized by unbalanced growth, unequal wealth, and unsustainable consumption and production, resulting in the degrading planet and growing inequality. But we can collectively decide to take a pause and move forward with the empathy and solidarity and foresight towards collective action for better futures. Stockholm 50 have now provided us with the opportunity for the collective pause. It is also a reflection on the interconnections of the health, it is also an interconnection of the health of the planet, equity and collective well-being, as well as the commitment to the notion of responsibility embedded in the 1972 Declaration. Most importantly, however, it is a call to accelerate the implementation of the commitments in the context of the decade of action and delivering of the Sustainable Development Goals. Our generation today has inherited an art that is rich with possibilities. Never before has knowledge and technology opened to so many opportunities to so many. You can all agree with me that, you can get information on everything in this world at the click of a button on Google. Yet, with these opportunities comes increased responsibility, a responsibility to care for the earth that sustains life and to ensure that prosperity reaches and is shared by all. But most importantly, that we still have an earth that you students, the future of our nations, will benefit from. And therefore, the next 50 years will be crucial for finding that balance. Solidarity and collective actions are essential for success, and the recommendations and messages that emerge from Stockholm 50 have an opportunity to make a historic milestone on the journey. It is indeed very symbolic to have this consultation in a temple of knowledge with enlarged participation of youth, undeniably the most concerned about the state of the planet in the coming decades. Like I said, it's really, really very important that we are able to sustain our environment for your future. It is no secret that UNDP has been supporting the government of Mauritius during the past 5 decades in achieving an improved environmental and socio-economic development. And therefore, that is why UNDP was requested in over 50 countries to lead these consultations and come up with a report that will be used to discuss in this very important meeting. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't take my seat without thanking my colleagues here who have been with us throughout, the communications team, the Ministry of Environment, of course, they've been with us in supporting all of this. We have our consultants who have been there in order to make sure everything is on course, Sharon, the communication specialist, and of course, our coordinator, Mr. Desha. You have done well to be organizing all of this and making sure everything is on and going well. At this point, I just want to wish you all a good and productive consultative meeting, and I thank you very much, our MC for the program, for hosting me today at the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Tanzila Sanku, for your speech. So where you have highlighted, you have given us some insights about this, the importance of this consultation process. Maybe I would like to present myself because I think I forgot to present myself in the beginning. So I'm Dr. Kundan. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Sustainable Development and Engineering at the University of Mascarenhas. So before we move ahead, I will just like to give some housekeeping rules so that we have a proper communication, because I know we have some colleagues, our Director General, and some participants also online. So I will first of all request everybody online to mute their microphone so that we don't have any interference during the workshop. And secondly, we have someone here, I think from the UNDP, who is monitoring the online participants. So if there are any questions, you can always write them in the chat. So we will be, following those questions, and we will give you a chance to intervene whenever the time is proper. So now I will also request everyone here to please put your telephone, mobile phone on silent mode, so that it doesn't disturb the flow of the event. So thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure to call upon our Director General, Dr. Radhakrishna Somana, who is actually right now in France. He's on mission in France, but in spite of his very tight schedule and of, it's very early there in France, he has accepted to deliver a small speech this morning. So Dr. Somana, I will request you to please deliver your speech.
Thank you, Dr. Kundan. It's very early in France right now. It's less than 10 degrees centigrade. But I thought it would be very important for me to be present in this meeting. So although I'm not physically present at the UdM, a warm welcome to all the distinguished guests. Unfortunately, I don't have all the names. The lady who spoke before me, such a good speech, very inspiring speech. So a warm welcome to all distinguished visitors to the UdM. Good morning to all my colleagues at the UdM, especially Dr. Kundan, academic colleagues, non-academic colleagues. I know you worked very hard to make this meeting a success today. So I'm going to, as usual, improvise my speech and try to complement what my predecessor has said. And the UdM can be considered to be a university where we have taken on board, we have tried to take on board environmental issues, climate change. I'm very proud to present UdM as a university which cares for it. I'll just take a few examples. We have listed a lot of projects on climate change. We have a smart and sustainable campus. We have a laboratory, a refrigeration laboratory, where we have initiated the use of carbon dioxide and ammonia refrigeration. We have started 2 master's courses related to the SDGs, Master in Sustainable Development, the Master in Sustainable Business Management. So I'm very proud to be the head of this university. And I strongly believe speeches are very important, and but actions are much more important. So I'm proud to be the head of a university where actors ready to collaborate with national organizations, international organizations, ensure we achieve our goal. My dream is, I think I've been following the issue of the ozone layer in the last 15 years as a scientific researcher. My dream, my wish is the whole world, at the individual level, regional level, continental level, international level, we can get together and use more action to find a solution to climate change issue. And according to me, the way the whole world got together to try to find a solution to the ozone layer, ozone depletion layer issue was remarkable. In the morning, I was looking at a video of the Dalai Lama, was speaking to some youngsters, and my inspiration of the Dalai Lama is the solution to climate change is not going to come from only one organization. It's going to come from an effort which we make individual level, community level, national level, and international level. And since I'm a very optimistic person by nature, sure, if the whole world gets together at different levels, we'll be able to find a solution to climate change. And one more thing I wanted to share with you, maybe some of you don't know, I've been in research in astrophysics for nearly 30 years. And you know, our solar system exists since 4.5 billion years, and never before, during the last 100 years, our planet has been such a precarious state. And we are the culprit. We are the ones who have created this situation. But fortunately, organizations like the United Nations and other international organizations have realized the situation is, how bad the situation is. We have to take measures to try and find solutions. I won't be longer. I wish all of you a very successful meeting, and I'm sad that I've not been able to meet the distinguished guest present at the UdM today. But I'm sure Dr. Condon will arrange a meeting so that I can meet you individually, because there's so much I want to share with all of you, a solution to the climate change issue. So thanks a lot. I'm very happy to address you this morning. So I wish you a happy meeting, a very good day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sumana. And I wish to again express our gratitude for your presence amongst us today, this morning, in spite of you being abroad. So I'll definitely arrange with the UNDP so that we can have a meeting when you come back, so that we can carry on the discussion. So thank you very much. I just wanted to tell you that today we are actually having almost like 70, 79 participants in this workshop. And since, you know, we are limited by the sanitary protocols in place to 50 persons, so we are not able to accommodate more than 50 persons here. That's why we have another room, which is just next door there, where some of our students have gathered. So, but they can still, communicate with us. Everything is live for them there also. So now I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Megu, who is the Environment Officer of the Ministry of Environment, to please come and deliver his speech.
Good morning. Mrs. Tanzila Sanko, Head of Environment, UNDP Country Office, Mauritius. Dr. Radhakrishna Somana, Director General, Université de Mascareignes. Mr. Madhukar Desha, National Project Coordinator, UNDP Country Office, Mauritius. Dr. Kanden, Dean of Faculty, Sustainable Development and Engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, good morning again. On behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Solid Waste Management and Climate Change, I am pleased to join with you today for the consultation on the theme Stockholm Plus 50, a healthy planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility, our opportunity. Stockholm Plus 50 will commemorate the 1972 United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and celebrate 50 years of global environmental action. It is in this conference that UNEP was created and the 5th of June declared as the World Environment Day. Stockholm Plus 50 is therefore inviting the global community to reflect on the most pressing environmental concerns, in particular in the face of climate change, loss of biodiversity and pollution, as well as the emerging challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We need to put our nature and people at the heart of the global economic recovery to build back better and greener. The Ministry of Environment, Solid Waste Management and Climate Change, in collaboration with the UNDP Country Office, have so far carried out consultations with various target groups, including the University of Mauritius, women, youth, local communities, senior citizens, civil society, disabled groups, and the private sector. And today, you, the students of Université de Mascareignes, will be part of this Stockholm Plus 50 consultations. Students, you form part of the youth of this country. It is a well-known fact that the youth of any country is a great asset. The youth plays a great role in nation building. The youth have the power to help a country develop more and move towards progress. The youth is also responsible for bringing social reform within a country and determine the future of a nation. You are therefore the future of this country and may become the leaders as well. Your active participation in today's consultation will help in taking the country towards progress. We want to understand your perspective on major challenges that are ahead of us. We want to hear from your experience, grasp your ideas, and know your initiatives so that we can build a better future. After this target group's consultation, the Ministry of Environment, in collaboration with the UNDP Country Office, will be holding a national consultation by the end of April. In that consultation, we will take stock of the outcomes of all the target groups, consultations, and further brainstorm and elaborate a national document that will be presented at Stockholm in June 2022 on the occasion of the World Environment Day. All these discussions and recommendations emanating from the national consultations or from all member states will be used by the United Nations to prepare a global synthesis report that will chart the way forward for governments and other stakeholders worldwide for a better world and a better future. To conclude, I wish to thank Université de Mascareignes for accepting to participate in the Stockholm Plus 50 consultation. I wish you a very fruitful deliberation. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Megu, for your speech. Just to remind you that today, actually, I'm very thankful to all my colleagues here across all the faculties of the UdM, so who have made it possible today to gather in spite of our students in the Faculty of Engineering being on industrial training. So they have taken a day off their industrial training to be present today, and I'm very thankful to you for that. And I'm also very thankful to my colleagues from the Swami Dayanand campus in Pamplemousse, who has, Mrs. Norma Bikari, who is here, who has motivated students from the Faculty of Business Management and also I think some students of the ICT, Vice Faculty of ICT, who are present here. So I thank all of you, thank all of the students who are present here today. So now we're going to move on with the program of this morning. So now I'm going to call upon someone who has been here with us for the last 1 year or so. So he's adjunct professor in the Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Sustainable Development and Engineering. And he's been here for 1 year, as I said, and since he's been here, so we have launched a research program which actually has been initiated in this faculty, but which cuts across all the faculties of the UdM, which is a Sustainability and Climate Change program. And so I am going to now invite Dr. Sanju Dinapore to please come and give us a presentation of the Hccp program. So Sanju, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all of you. I think I had planned to speak in Creole, but I think it looks like everybody is speaking in English, so I'll just carry on in English. I just wanted to, I don't know most of you because I don't actually partake in lecturing, you know. My role, and I'm also not based on campus, I just come once in a while. I just want to start by asking 2 questions, all right? And you have to actually engage with me, okay? It's not about sustainable development, it's not about just listening to someone, but you have to actually start thinking deeply about the problem at hand. So the previous speakers have used some terminologies, right? Madame has used a common action problem. A common action problem is also known, most often known as a collective action problem. Do you understand what is a collective action problem? Do you know what it means? Just say, who thinks yes or no? Yeah, just speak. No? No? Yes or no? Just nod your head up and down or sideways. No? 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 Okay. So, first thing, if you want to understand sustainable development or the problems related to sustainable development, you have to understand what is the collective action problem. All right? I am not going to tell you what it is today, but if you don't know what is a collective action problem, right? And in fact, one of the reasons that we have government, no, if someone asks you, why do we have a government? No? One of the reasons, there are many others, one of the reasons will be that we have to solve collective actions problems, right? These are problems that we are all involved in, but it is not in our individual power to find a solution, right? So they are collective action problem. And sustainable development is a collective action problem. Climate change is a collective action problem. Poverty and alleviation is a collective action problem, all right? The provision of education is a collective action problem. Provision of any infrastructure, roads, we all use roads, right? But do we individually build roads? No. So it is a collective action problem, right? So that's one thing. Another thing that has been used, and Mr. Mego used that word, do you know the difference between a nation and a state? Un État et une nation. A state and a nation. He used the word nation, right, in his speech. But then when you use the word nation, it is often juxtaposed to the state. Do you know what the difference is? Yes or no? Nod your heads. No. But, all right, just being a citizen, being alive and being a member of a country, you have to understand what is the difference between a state and a nation, right? And in fact, I will tell you my own opinion. We have a state, Mauritius is a state, but it is questionable whether we have a nation. All right? So you have to understand those. And then the question comes, can you actually build a vision, a common vision for the future if you don't have a nation? right? So these are very important questions that underpin the whole thing that we call sustainability, sustainable development, right? And I will be honest with you, most of the education that we have is mostly vocational. It's for us to find a job. That's very important, right? Because like my first slide I will show you later is about the economy, and everything we do today is mediated through the market economy, but you will find that the education, I will not call it education, I will call it schooling. You go to school, all right? So the way we are schooled doesn't give us or equip us to understand those basic concepts that we are talking about today that are very important to actually grapple with the difficulties, all right, of finding solutions to common problems. I will show you something. The problems that we had in 50 years ago, in 72, when we recognized that, you know, the environment was being polluted. But the problem is amplified, much more amplified today. So, for all practical purposes, for all the education that we are getting, for all the technical advancements that we have, we are in a worse position today than we were 50 years ago, right? So we have to, that is the fundamental question. Why can't we then collectively find solutions to these problems that are existential in nature, right? So I'll grapple a bit with these things, and I will tell you the responsiveness of UdM through the Sustainability and Climate Change program of what we are doing. Can we start? All right, yeah. So my name is Sanju. Okay, I live in La Golette, and I'm chair of this program that we started last year. The first thing is I want to show you, right? This is basically Economics 101. How many of you have studied economics? You have studied economics, a few. Most people haven't, but you know you're all an economic agent, right? You understand that. You are all an economic agent. So you should all understand how the economy works because you are actors in it. It's a bit like you go play football, right? And you don't know what you're doing. No one does that, right? You understand the rules of the game before you engage with the game. But the problem is, and this is another problem, we are all economic agents, but we don't know how the economy works. And that is a big problem because a lot of the problem that we have comes out of the economy. Okay? So I'll probably through the discussion I will highlight a number of shortcomings in the way we have been educated, right? So look at that. This is basically how the economy works. If you go to school in Form 3, in Form 5, in HSC, you go and do a first degree in economics, you go and do a PhD in economics, it's the same thing. The only thing that changes is the level of application of mathematics, you know, in terms of modeling that changes, right? But for all practical purposes, this stays the basic blueprint for how the economy works. So what it does is, it says that you have, you know, 3 factors of production. You have, you know, you have money, you have buildings, you have land that you need to build things and grow food, and then you have labor. People put in their hard work in it. You mix it, you get goods and services that go to the market, and we consume those goods and services, right? This is what we do. There is nothing, think about yourself, you know, from the day you get up, from the time you get up in the morning, you eat, right? Your breakfast. Where do you get your breakfast? It's probably bought from the supermarket. You put on your clothes, okay, you go and take a shower, the soap, whatever you use, sorry, also bought from the market. You wear clothes, all the clothes are bought from the market. You take a car or take the bus, it's a market-mediated thing. You come to university, you have to pay someone to buy an education. It's market-mediated. Everything is market-based, right? So everything we do today, for all practical purposes, goes through this mechanism, right? But look what happens now. This is basically the latest research, right, from the Planetary boundaries. The Stockholm Environment Institute, that is based in Stockholm, they've been doing for the last 10, 15 years research on how ecosystems that underlie all the services for life to take place on the planet are polluted, basically, or are degraded. Okay? You understand that? What is more important to live? Your mobile phone or having oxygen? Huh? Oxygen. What is more important for you to live? Having a very expensive pair of shoes or having water to drink? Okay, so what's the difference between those two things? Those two pairs of comparisons. The oxygen and the water, we have them from ecosystem services, right? Nature provides us with a number of services and they are free. The water cycle, no one pays for it, it's given to you, right? The way photosynthesis and carbon is sequestered by the carbon cycle, right, is given to us, it's free. The other things you have to pay for. But the thing we have to realize is that the economy and life on the planet cannot exist without those underlying free ecosystem services, okay? And what we are doing is, through our market-based economic activities, we are degrading those underlying ecosystem services that are vital for life to take place on the planet. Vous avez compris ce que je veux dire là? C'est-à-dire, la planète de nous un service gratuitement. Ça un service-là, je ne m'en rien pour autant pour la vie de la planète. D'accord? Ben, les affaires-là, c'est des affaires qui nous médient à travers un mécanisme de marché. Et cette médiation-là n'est pas considérée du tout ça un système service écosystémique là, qui veut dire qu'il n'y a pas un problème de pollution. Qu'est-ce qui arrive ici? So I go back to English, huh? So just a little bit of pedagogy in Creole, right? So look at that now. Do we have a pointer? Yeah. You look at the green part. Okay, there's a number of system services. Okay, you read them. Okay, you're smart people. So there are a number of services. Okay. Do you know the different geological time frames? The Holocene, the Carbonaceous scheme, you know, and then we have now the Anthropocene, right? Okay, you have to know these things. Geological time frame is very important, okay, to understand our sustainability, okay? So in the Holocene, all those services were within the green part, right? So they were within the boundaries of the planet, like we say. Now, with the market-based economy, you will see that most of them are outside the green space. It means that through the economic activities, we are going beyond the bounds, beyond the capacity of the planet to provide for the services, either by polluting them or by depleting them. All right? For example, someone spoke, Dr. Somana spoke about the ozone layer, right? So you will see there's an ozone one there, all right? So that's one ecosystem service. What is the service that it provides? It filters out all the UV. If you didn't have the ozone layer, there would be no life on the planet, right? Because then it would be like a microwave oven, okay? Because UV in the spectrum of light has the most energy, you know that. This is what you create in your microwave oven at home, okay? So basically, when you have a hydrochlorofluorocarbons, it was depleting. It was interacting with the O3, and it was depleting it, right? Now, when you learn about the collective action problem, you will see that we've been very good at actually dealing with the ozone depletion problem, but the reasons are very specific to that industry, right? Just to let you know, there were at that time only 5 big industries worldwide, right, that were producers of hydrochlorofluorocarbons, okay? One of them, you may know, is called DuPont, right? DuPont is the largest manufacturer of synthetic material in the world. It's an American company, yeah? It was the largest company, right, that produced hydrofluorocarbons, the refrigerants that we use in aerosols and in air conditioning. Now, because it is the largest in the market, the one thing that it does to stay ahead of competition is a new product development, all right? So DuPont was very rarely you have that. DuPont was the company that welcomed the Stockholm Convention, right? Because the Stockholm said that we have to phase out. phase out or phase down, right? And DuPont, because they rely on staying ahead by developing new products, they went on, all right, and developed new products, HFCs that we use today, right? And other products that are not non-ozone depleting, ODS, all right? So they stayed ahead of the curve, and that's why basically we had a tremendous success, right? But you cannot apply the same thing to fossil fuel, unfortunately, right? So we cannot apply what has happened with ozone, ODS, with climate change. But you have to read a bit about the history and all the stuff, yeah? But what I'm saying is, this happens because of the market-based economy, right? And we are all actors in that, eh? We all contribute to that. Unless you see yourself as an actor in creating the problem, you will not be able to actually do something to solve the problem. The recognition is that we are all contributors to the problem. Okay, no one escapes that because we are all market actors. We are all economic agents. Every time you want to buy a new clothes, new everything, think about it, all right? Now, I will tell you now, there is a history of how the UN system, because we are here under a UN funded, I don't know how you call it, dialogue, right? So there is a number, there's a history to it, and you have to understand the history, okay? So in 1972, there was the first conference, right? Human development and environment. And in fact, what happened was in the 60s, if you want to know the history and go back to it and you want to read about it, you have to read the book that Rachel Carson published in 1961 called The Silent Spring, right? The Silent Spring was basically the book that was first published that showed how through the market-based mechanism we produce a lot of chemical substances, right? Persistent organic pollutants, we call them POPs, right? That cause a lot of damage to the environment, all right? So that was that. And then we had the first conference, and then out of all of those, if you had to do something and go and read about it to know what's happening, you go and read of all the outcomes of the Rio Conference of 1992. Okay, so what I've done is, you will get the slide. I've asked them to share you with the slide. I've put one slide for each of the different conferences, just to give you an idea, the objective and the main outcomes. What I'll do is, I'll just pause a little bit on this one, right? So look, we are celebrating Stockholm plus 50, right? But if you want to learn something about sustainable development that will be practical and applied, you go back to the outcomes of the Rio Conference of 1992, okay? So basically, the three main conventions were established at Rio. The Framework Convention on Climate Change, Biodiversity, and Combating Desertification, right? So these are three main, we call them the three Rio Conventions, right? Very, very super important. Then what it did as well is, it published Agenda 21, all right? It's a big fat book that provides a roadmap to the world about how to deal with sustainable development. If you go today and read Agenda 21, download it, you will get it. 95% of what is in Agenda 21 is still applicable today, right? It's a very well done documentation, all right? We tend to reinvent the wheel a lot, but if you go back to Agenda 21, you will see that most of it is still relevant today, okay? So go and read that. It's very good material. The other thing that is important is, it laid out the 27 principles of sustainable development, okay? In Sweden, Stockholm in 72, there were 26 principles. Okay, you can go back to that as well. But if you go to the 27 principles in Rio, it takes those 26 principles from Stockholm and it adds another one. It adds what we call the precautionary principle. Okay, so precautionary principle is a principle that tells you that the lack of scientific evidence in the face of uncertainty that you may have irreversible damage to the environment is sufficient cause for abstaining from action. Okay? So it places the onus on the one who wants to do an action. All right? So that is the principle, the precautionary principle, and it was added in Rio. So if you look at Agenda 21, if you look at the 27 principles of sustainable development, those principles don't change. They are principles, they are always applied. If you look at all conferences that come afterwards under the UN, they all go back to the 27 principles of sustainable development. So if you want to contribute to sustainable development, I would suggest that you go back to Agenda 21 and learn about these 27 principles, all right? So, there's another thing that you have to understand. We live in a small island developing state, right? Mauritius is 6, you know that, yeah? But you know that every 10 years, there's a conference under the UN for SIDS. Did you know that? No? Okay. So basically, there will be a conference this year, right? In Stockholm, in June. So 2 years later, there will be the 4th SIDS conference, right, on sustainable development. So because SIDS have a peculiarity, no, they have their own conference on sustainable development for SIDS. So that's why I also, in the pages that you will see, you will find at the bottom, that those conferences, they also convene the conference for SIDS, all right? For example, in Rio Plus 20 in 2012, they convened the 3rd SIDS conference that took place in 2014 in Samoa. So what it does is, the first one was in Barbados, in the Caribbean, 94. The second one was in the Indian Ocean in Mauritius, 2005. The third one was in the Pacific in Samoa in 2014. And then the next one will go back to the Caribbean. It will come back there 10 years later to the Indian Ocean, and 10 years later goes back to the Pacific Islands, right? There's a rotation, okay? So that's also to know. And you should know that when it comes to the sustainable development of SIDS, there is now the Samoa pathway. Right? In 2014 in Samoa, there was a document like Agenda 21 called the Samoa Pathway for the Sustainable Development of Island States. So you probably didn't know these things, right? But it's there. You should go and consult. Now, what I will show is, very quickly now in the couple of slides, what are we doing then? Okay, we know all these problems, there have been all these discussions. We as an institution, all right, a tertiary institution, what are we doing? Okay, since last year, we've operationalized the Sustainability and Climate Change Program, all right? It is a program, I'm the chair of the program, okay? It is basically a program that is not in any faculty. It is a floating program in the university, and all the faculties contribute to it. And I will explain to you why it's like that. Normally, you're all in faculties, right? Yeah? But climate change doesn't know borders, right? Poverty doesn't know borders. All these collective action problems don't know borders, right? We human beings like to fragment and put things in silos. That's another problem. But we have to synthesize. I don't know whether you read philosophy. Hegel, the German philosopher, always have talked about you have a thesis, you have an antithesis. Politics today is in this mode. It's polarized. You have a thesis, you have an antithesis, right? La thèse et l'antithèse. But sustainability requires what? Synthesis, right? You have la thèse, l'antithèse. Ce qu'on doit faire maintenant, c'est la synthèse. This is what we are not able to do, all right? So this is what the program is there to do, is how can we find synthetic solutions to common action problems, all right? So it has a couple of goals, but I think for you, the third one is most important, all right? We are working with the private sector, the public sector, specialized NGOs to find solutions to real world problems, right? Climate change, poverty, whatever you call it, the macroeconomy, we work on everything. So what is important for you out of the research, there are ideas for you to be able to participate, right? For example, Jai, who is here, I don't know whether you teach any of these people, Jai. He is doing some very exciting work on metabolic flow in the economy, all right? We can do metabolic flow from many different perspectives. He's starting with carbon, material flow, then we can look at material flow from a consumption versus a consumption-based, production versus consumption-based, or you can look at thermodynamics. How many of you study thermodynamics? No? You don't know thermodynamics? That is another problem, right? Everybody should learn thermodynamics because the only way you can define life on the planet is because of thermodynamics, right? You are here because of thermodynamics, okay? So everything we do is basically underpinned by thermodynamics, right? So we are going that. So there could be a lot of research and you can participate in those, and we will give you a list later, and you can talk to your supervisors or your head of dean. Norma is here also participating in that, and all your lecturers, to see whether there are things that you would like to work on under the Hccp, and then you can contact us and we can do it together. So the important thing to know is, very quickly, when we look at sustainable development, we talk about the environment, society, and the economy. You've heard about that, right? Now, there are different configurations for those, all right? Most of what you see in the textbooks are not very useful. The only one that has biophysical meaning is this one here. So this is a nested hierarchy approach to sustainable development. The economy is a social construct. Humans have created the economy. For what? Standard definition, allocation of scarce resources, right? For a price mechanism in the market. But all of that is embedded within the biosphere. So the biosphere, the environment, provides the largest envelope that contains society, and within society we have the economy. All right? So now look at the problem here. The environment has a number of inherent characteristics. You like it or you don't like it, it doesn't matter. It's a fact. Right? It's not about liking and dislike like you do on social media, like, dislike. Here we don't, it's not applicable here. So the environment has a number of inherent characteristics independent of what we think. It's given. Okay? Out of those, you get a number of emerging properties. This is what we call the science of complexity. Right? Out of complex systems, we have emergence. Okay? Just like your body. Okay, you have cells. Cells come together to give tissue. They differentiate to give organs. Organs differentiate to give subsystems. Subsystems combine to give your whole body, right? Now, you've heard about consciousness, no? Consciousness. But consciousness is an emerging property. It's not found in any of these subsystems. Okay? All right? So that's what we're talking about. So out of these characteristics, you get a number of emerging properties. And the manifestation of those emerging properties is what is sustainability. It's something that can endure in time over billions of years, right? So now look at what we do. The socio-economic systems that we make, right? People create those, like the market mechanism is a socio-economic system that we created. It has properties that are completely against those of nature. Right? For example, nature gets energy from where? The sun. That's the only place it gets the energy from, right? The sun. Where do we get our energy from? From fossil fuel that we dig from under the ground. Okay? What has nature done? Nature has done the reverse. It's taken the carbon and put it under the ground. How much time we have? 5 minutes or so? Okay. And then basically we dig it out and put it back in the atmosphere. So we do completely different to what the environment does, right? And that's why we have a dislocation between how the socioeconomic systems behave to how the natural environment behaves. And that friction is called unsustainability. All right? So we have this conflict between systems. So what we've done is we have a framework based on that where we work on three things. We work on public policy, we work on institutional arrangements, and we work on legal frameworks. These are the three means in the public domain that are given to us to actually do something, right? We have policies, strategies. We have mechanisms to coordinate all the actors in the system. And then one of the things that we have is legal framework to actually get us to behave in a particular way. So all the work that we do, revolve around those three. And the first thing that we do is we use a systems approach, right? We have to understand the behavior of systems. Why is to prevent, normally when you go to a doctor, you have pain in your leg. He will just look at your leg in isolation to the whole body, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But what we do normally is, that little man solves a problem, okay? He's pushing away the domino. But the problem is, there are delays across the system, and basically the problem comes back bigger in time. An example is traffic congestion. What do we do when there's traffic congestion? We build more roads, right? When we build more roads, we give space for more vehicles to be put on the road. So in the short term, we solve the problem, but in the medium to long term, the problem is amplified and becomes more difficult to solve. So that is a lack of systems thinking. The second one is we use a trans-disciplinary approach, right? Just a very quick thing here. We study disciplines, right? Sciences, economics, literature, philosophy. But when we have collective action problems, we have to bring all the fields together. That's what you have to understand. We have to go beyond disciplines. We have to find a way to synthesize across all the disciplines to find solutions, right? So that's what we also apply. And the third one we do is we have participatory approaches. So to do transdisciplinarity, we have to get collaboration of many, many different people, because everybody has different perspectives. If you look at climate change, my mother, who is 80 years old, will probably die in the next 5-10 years. Her perspective on climate change is different from my little son, who is 11 years old, who has 70 years to live, right? So perspectives are different depending on where you sit in the system. So we have to be able to combine all the perspectives together, right? So we are doing that as well. So out of all those things is, last 3 slides, you will get them. We have a number of projects or programs on which we are working, okay? Please, you will get the slides, start thinking about it when you have to do a project in your final year, in your master's or whatever it is. If you find anything interesting from what we've said today, come and talk to us. We work on climate change mitigation, we work on climate change adaptation, and we also work on other sustainability issues, right? So there's a whole bunch of things, right? We work on ethnography, philosophy, cultural anthropology, sociology, psychology, maths, economics. We do science of climate change. We do downscaling of global circulation models down to dynamically or statistically. We do a whole bunch of things, right? Just to give you how we apply the, transdisciplinary. We have another project, a program of work we've started on spirituality and sustainability with the Institut Cardinal Jean Margeo and the Council of Religions, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are participating in a solution, you have to ask yourself, but who am I? What am I doing here? What purpose do I serve on this planet, right? So there is an ontological perspective that you have to bring to it, and we call that the spiritual dimension of why I'm here and what am I doing here, right? So I will leave you here. This brings me to this is my last slide, I think, yeah? So thank you very much for bearing with me. I know it's a lot of things, right? But just to know that if you want to know that we are part of the solution, at the start we are part of the problem. And we have to realize how much we don't know. To learn, you have to acknowledge that we don't know, and we have to learn. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanju. I think this was a very inspiring and also very much educational for you, all the students who are here. So be aware that this program is here, and we need the collaboration of all of you here, as Sanju's mentioned. So we are going to circulate this slide to all of you, and don't hesitate to reach us if you have anything that you want to ask. Would have liked to take some questions, but I think we are a bit short of time. So without any further ado, what I will now do is I will call upon Mr. Madhukar Desai. Actually, Mr. Madhukar Desai is the person who reached out to me for the organization of this event today, and we clicked on that, and today it's happening, and we are very happy. So Mr. Desai is going to brief us a bit about the second part of this event before we break for coffee. Okay, so Mr. Desai.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kandan, and thank you everybody for being here. We're going to be a bit more down to earth after the inspiring speech that we had from Sanju. I know if we gave him half day, he'll keep talking till noon. He has so much to share with us. And so all protocol respected, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Stockholm plus 50. I think by now you already have enough information. 1972 was the first conference on human environment. 50 years later, we are celebrating that, commemorating it. And the government of Sweden, so I open here an apartheid to say we need to thank the government of Sweden for funding the whole program. In fact, the conference is being held in Stockholm itself, and it's a normal UN conference on June 2 and 3 of this year. And the thinking that we are doing, the exercise that we are doing, should be considered, disons, un moment de réflexion. Nous prenons une petite pause, nous réfléchissons un petit peu ce qui peut passer, and we give our ideas. I think the youth, most of you here are youth. We probably have a larger proportion of youth, or even stakeholders to be consulted, because you're the most concerned about it, right? And so that reflection will contribute to something. You might know that the 2015, we had the MDGs, and then 2015 till 2030, we had the SDGs, and it's probably the beginning or already the thoughts that are being collected to work out what will be the goals from 2031 and onwards. So it's quite an important one, right? And so we talked about some of the key messages that Stockholm plus 50 had. They are there, reflecting, connecting, and accelerating urgent action. The urgency is in there at 3-4 places. We know we have a small, very short time. Those who are involved who know a bit about the background of climate change. We need to reverse the trend, try to be carbon neutral maybe by 2050. So there's a lot of information on there. And but the urgency is we need to take actions very fast. Somehow, maybe we feel about it, but at world level, somehow maybe this is not being translated into action. And when we talk about the triple planetary crisis, the answers in the fourth, fifth bullet, we're talking about pollution, we're talking about climate change, and we're talking about restoring nature and biodiversity. And these things will come up and up in most of the discussions. So, but Stockholm plus 50 had these key messages which are projected. We have only one Earth, one planet, we know about that. So keep that a bit in the background when you're having the discussions. So now we go to the next slide. I've got only 5-6 slides, it's not much. So usually when we have this type of consultation, I share a little bit of some insights about the theme and the question. It's not that easy, we have to admit. I think it was drafted somewhere by a group of people that didn't take into account all the different, like developing countries or even less developing countries. Some stakeholders will understand what to do well, but in other cases, the stakeholders may not understand what is meant. So we give our thought for whatever we have and what we understand. So to me, first of all, we talk about the interconnectedness of the health of the planet, equity. I think it's a very heavy meaning, equity, not just equality, equity. Make sure that we take care of, all the components of the society in a fair way, leave no one behind. This I think, this mantra, you're hearing it a bit more often these days. And then collective well-being. We need to think about others also, not just about ourselves. And I translated, that's the next point is my own. It's a vision of the future. What do you think about it? Because when we ask you the main theme, a healthy planet and prosperity for all. It doesn't have to be just environment, doesn't have to be, it's about everything you can say. And I take this opportunity, on the last line, you find things like water, pollution, prevention, sensitization, awareness, probably can be given as an answer in almost all the questions. But one point I would like to raise here is about sustainable development. It's very often, the moment you start talking about sustainable development, people associate it with the environmental dimensions of sustainable development. In fact, in 3, we talk about this. But sustainable development is much larger. In fact, when you look at the SDGs, you have 17 goals. Is the person who's working for the care of the elderly, or those who are sick, or you're studying maybe culture, sports, education, you are alleviating poverty. Are these people contributing towards sustainable development? Obviously, yes, that's because it's now in the SDGs. But for a number of years, I think we've been focused just on the environmental dimension, and we know also that the environment has a lot of impact on all the other SDGs. So keep that in mind. When we talk about SDGs, it's not just environment. But now I just say a few words about the 3 themes. So next, the first theme is about, we just mentioned, healthy planet and prosperity for all. Some maybe of direct concern would be for the youth, should we have a good job, good education, for elderly, maybe proper health, maybe even a good pension. And for others, it can also be about spirituality and peace. Some people, we have that frame of mind, that's enough for them. So you can give your own thoughts what it is. And I understand you already had a preliminary discussion, so I won't elaborate on that. And we'll be happy to hear from you very soon after we break out for the discussion. The next theme. So here we're talking sustainable and inclusive recovery from Corona, from COVID. So important words is sustainable, not a solution which will just last a few months or a couple of years, but dans la durée du temps. Also in terms of sustainability, we've just talked a lot about it. Basically, we don't do something which is detrimental to the environment when we're trying to recover from COVID. We take that opportunity. And we also think about both local and international level. And I quoted that last line because I find there's a lot of things in there. When we talk about long-term transformation, very often we think of, we need incremental action. Everybody contributes incrementally when you switch off the light or you don't waste petrol and so on. But we also need good transformation so that the society can make a leap, right? Nature positive, I think you understand very well. Low carbon, we've talked quite a bit. You're very well aware about it. Low pollution, again, very familiar. Resource efficient, so whatever we do, whether we use less petrol to go to work or less material to cook something or to make our clothes, so this is resource efficiency. Inclusive, very, very important these days. Remember we said leave no one behind, just think about it. We don't just think our own good at the expense of the others. We need to take everybody on board. And resilient economies, again, it's a word which is being used very often now that we understand. It's a resilient economy we need, a resilient building, resilient agriculture, and so on. And now we go to the third theme. Here is on the environmental dimension of the SDGs. And again, it's very wide because there's so much to talk, but maybe a few things like finance. We know we have a problem, and we had the NDCs just last year. We submitted to COP26, and one of the big problems, of course, is to have enough money. Mauricio says we need about 6.5 billion US dollars. And that's a big problem to carry out all the mitigation and adaptation programs. In terms of governance and institutional reform, I think that also has just been probably pointed out by Sanju. Just make sure that when we are trying to achieve one objective, it's not at the expense of another, like building the road and removing the forest, right? Digital transformations and effective partnerships. So here, I would say big hello to you, because the thinking these days is that you're very much familiar now with all the digital part. I see my granddaughter of 4 or 5 years already, manipulating the phone or the remote control and so on. And we will need a lot of digital use, equipment, technology to make the transformation that we need. And it seems that because of you have it, you're a good partner to carry out the transformational change. So we thank you in advance for that. And finally, collective action and strengthening. I think we talked a lot about this. So on this basis here, I think, do I have another? Okay, I remember there's also one question at the end. It's called question for all. What do we expect to happen after that? You give your feelings. I gave some examples here. Make sure that what we've said is picked up, people read about it and take actions. Some would like to have more funding for some project and so on. So, but it's important. And in whatever you do, try to also make recommendations, right? Because it's not just to say we don't have enough road or we don't have enough water. Try to say the recommendation could be in terms of actions or even policies. This is what we'd like, and we can recommend, and hopefully these can be taken up later on. So on this note, I think I will stop here. I don't want to be long because we're already a bit short of time. I understand you have a good thinking about it. So I'll leave it on to Dr. Kandan to carry out the remaining program. And I take this opportunity again to thank you all, as well as the UNDP team, for having this session today. Thank you.
I'd like to present myself, Ms. Sanko Keshita, and my fellow presenter, Mr. Akhilesh Arnott. Together, we'll be exploring the dialogue number 1, reflecting on the urgent need for actions to achieve a healthy planet and prosperity of all, along with having 5 principal questions. Firstly, how can we restore and regenerate a positive relationship with nature? List 2 or 3 good practices and pathways that you would like to see scale up to enable a move to a healthy planet. The first solution we have came across was the urban greenery. We live in a world where urbanization has taken over. In order to coexist with our biodiversity and ecosystem, more focus should be given on urban greenery, where we have a harmonious relationship between our city dwellers and environment. Urban greenery collects rainwater and is resilient against storm and erosion. Also, it enhances a better quality of life in cities. Greenery also contributes to reduce the noise pollution by using the method of attenuation. Moving on to the second question. What are the actions that you or your group would like to see scale up to change towards a healthy planet? What policy structures need to be in place for you to take such action? Firstly, we need to make a switch to natural medicines, Ayurvedic. The plastic and other artificial materials are not used for treatment to make Ayurvedic, making the system eco-friendly. In the Ayurvedic system, every part of the environment is given the importance which makes the optimum utilization of natural resources from daily usage to the drug. Secondly, we have the transition to green energy. We will be reducing our reliance on fossil fuels and moving toward clean, renewable energy that can add the benefit to reduce the local pollution generated by the combustion of coal, oil, and gas. The policies implementing public health actions, encouraging more physical activities and greater reliance on active mode of transportation, such as through physical activities, thus promoting mass media campaigns, bike sharing schemes, and schemes like creating low emission zones. Electric cars are better for the environment. They emit fewer greenhouse gases and air pollutants than petrol or diesel cars. And this takes into account the production and electricity generation to keep them running. The government shall provide more subsidies on electrical vehicles so as to encourage the public to change to a greener and cleaner tomorrow. I'll now yield the floor to Mr. Arnott, who will take over from this presentation. Thank you.
So, fellow comrades, welcome. Thank you, Ms. Shankar, to letting me the floor. So I'm going to about the further questions. So I have 3 questions. So the third question is, how could marginalized and vulnerable groups benefit from policies and initiatives designed to restore a more sustainable and resilient relationship with nature that mitigates nature's risks? So in this, we can see that the list of vulnerable and marginalized groups has been listed below. So at first, we can see that who you are, what's your age, what's your sex, ethnicity, language, are you disabled, are you not? And where do you live, which comes with wealth, conflict, social status, and location. Throughout the world, we can see that there are various types of people that exist. So everyone faces a different type of difficulty. To start with, by the list of vulnerable or marginalized groups, we mean human beings, segregated based on their age, sex, ethnicity, language, disability, victim, or refugees of conflicts. As we know all, unfortunately, there has been conflict ongoing on in Ukraine, the war between Russia and Ukraine. This has come with the question, how are we going to solve the problem that has arisen because of this? So for that, we have come to this. To tackle this issue, the UN has set up a campaign of Leave No One Behind. That has been set up long before to support, transform the 6 SDGs. So the first one is education, gender, inequality. Second, health, well-being, and demography. Third, energy, decarbonization, and sustainable industry. Fourth, sustainable food, land, water, and oceans. The fifth is sustainable cities and communities. Sixth, digital revolution for sustainable development. Through all that, it's straightforward. The first is education. To advance as a civilization, we have to be educated. Education must be available to all sets of people. Second is health, well-being, demography. Health is a compulsory need that has to be accommodated to every person. Third, energy. Our world depends on energy. Right now, we are dependent on fossil fuels and all that, but we have to move on from that. We have to decarbonize the whole world so that we can build a sustainable world. The fourth has become sustainable food. Right now, we are growing food, but it is not sustainable. We are using pesticide, which is another way of polluting our world. We have to move on from that, using green ways so that we can grow more food. Six is sustainable cities and communities. I'm from civil engineering, so I'm aware of the amount of pollution that construction industry emits every year. And we have to move from that and build a greener, sustainable community. Now, six is digital revolution for sustainable development. We all have a mobile phone with us. So it's very easy to share information. It's very easy to make people aware of the dangers that we are facing. So here are some steps. The third step we have concluded 3 steps. So the first is investing in agriculture with known technologies and management practices. The second is investing in young children education. And the third is reducing poverty. Each one comes with benefits. So the first one, investing in agriculture, comes with food security. In Mauritius, we import most of our products. And right now, everything is rising, cost of living is rising. So it's not a way of sustainable living. So with that, while we invest in agriculture, we can improve human health because food is available everywhere, so less famine and all that. And climate mitigation so that we can reduce our green footprint. Investing in young children education helps improve well-being, increase economic development because our future depends on the young one, and stabilize population growth by providing legal identity. The third one, reducing poverty. We have to diversify our economy. It's very important. Right now, we are facing a crisis. We have all been part of it. We have seen that our cost of living in Mauritius has risen to another extent. So we have to work together so that we can reduce poverty. We have to diversify our economy. Right now, we are just a service-based economy. We have to diversify it in agriculture, export more, all that. So here we can see that, let's say the pie is 100%. What we have achieved in the last years, the 68% right there we can see, or from part of the 17 SDGs that have been already set up. Right now, we have seen this survey that 68% of it, we don't have data on it. We have been implementing it, but we don't have any data of it. Only 17% of that has been positive right now. The little change, which means that it has not come to great change, is around 6%, and negative that has been non-beneficial to us is 9%. So we can see that although we have been implementing some SDGs, it's not efficient at all, so we have to work towards that. So the next question is question 4. How can we safeguard the rights of people and nature, including, among others, indigenous people and local communities, environmental defenders, women, youth, future generations? So our global goal, we have 17 SDGs that I have mentioned before. The first one is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitization, affordable energy, decent work, industry, innovations, reduce inequality, sustainable cities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace and justice, and partnership for goals. So we are all part of it. The 17 SDGs applies to us. In Mauritius, right now, we have been in a good balance for that, and around the world, there have not been every country, unfortunately, every country cannot satisfy the 17 SDGs. So here we can see that there are ways to ensure the safeguard. So first one is nature. We have to implement severe laws against pollution. Our laws right now is very flexible. We have laws in place, but we don't follow it. There's no one to implement, to enforce it. Preserving endangered species, example, protection programs. We have that in Mauritius, and fortunately it has been working. We have We have animals also, as well as plants that are going extinct, and we have been protecting it. Supporting environmental defenders. There are many ONGs that are fighting for us so that they can keep these animals alive. The IPLCs, preservation of native people, land and water, denounce attack on IPLCs. Native people have, throughout the years, throughout civilization, we have seen that many countries invaded other countries, take part of that, banish the people there. That's wrong, but now we have to enforce that. Six is future generation, ensuring rights to education, empowerment, bodies and women. For women, we have to create equal opportunities in the society, protection against violence, promoting mental health. So the fifth question we are going to about is, what are the new or prioritized sets of metrics and indicators needed for tracking our progress towards a healthier and more prosperous planet? So these are the set of indicators that we have used. So health, poverty, natural loss, climate change. 4 major consequences that have been affecting us. This is there. So the set of metrics is we have derived everything, the health, poverty, natural loss, climate change. We have seen that in health, maternal mortality ratio, birth by skilled health professional, provide access to medicine and vaccine is compulsory. Poverty, eradicate extreme poverty all around the world. Nature loss, reverse the loss of forest. Right now, there's a major loss in forest in Amazon. We have been burning for cultivation of land and raising of cattle and all. And the fight against climate change. So the final question, which is question 4, what kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm? So I would like to say that through my group, what we have researched, what we have found out throughout is that there are policies in place. But unfortunately, we have not been able to complete it 100%. We have a mandate for 2030, but unfortunately, I don't think that we are going to complete it. We can complete it, but it has to come from within. It has to come from us. We have to move toward a greener society, greener peace, greener earth. That's all that I can say, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. 2 minutes for questions. There are any questions? You don't want to ask questions, so that we don't ask you questions. Okay? No questions? I think you are very clear. So thank you very much for the presentation.
So now I will request you to, I don't know, this, you have to synthesize it and make it in a form that we can send to UNDP by tomorrow, right? So now I'll request group 2 to please come over for your presentation. When you introduce yourself, just mention from which department and faculty you are.
You are from civil engineering? You are from? Jim.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adesh, and foremost, a big thanks to Stockholm Plus 50 for giving us the opportunity to share our ideas and opinions. I would also like to thank everyone for your presence and the previous group for their informative and ideas and comments. Well, let's start the presentation. My team and I prepare by quoting Joseph Borrell, and I quote, "COVID-19 reshaped our world. We don't know yet when the crisis will end, but we can be sure that we can be sure that by the time it ends, our world will look different. End of quote. Our topic of today is on the leadership dialogue 2, which is achieving a sustainable and inclusive recovery from the coronavirus disease. While going through the slides, you will notice that there are some ideas being proposed, some innovation on existing ideas, their implementation, and their results. Without any delay, let's start with question 1, which is, what are the most promising sustainable and inclusive recovery practices currently being applied by public, private, and civil society groups at individual, society, community, city, regional, and country level? And how could we scale them up? As shown on the table, for public section, on an individual scale, local production of protective masks and alcoholic gels is being produced to counteract local demand. On community level, vaccination campaigns have been organized. And on the country level, mass vaccination has been organized with a success rate of 76.6% and climbing. In addition, we think that flu clinics could be introduced in Mauritius instead of using existing hospitals, which are not properly equipped for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. For the private sector, on an individual scale, work from home was introduced. Moreover, on a community level, the delivery of food packs and basic needs were given to the most affected people. On a country level, there was a reinforcement of medical equipment for better collaboration with the public sector. For the civil section, as an individual, the least we can do is to respect the sanitary measures. Furthermore, on community level, we can help the elderly by teaching them how to properly use medical masks and sanitizers. And finally, on a country level, we can volunteer for campaigns programs to raise awareness about COVID-19. Coming to the second part of the question, how can we scale up the measures? It's by educating our population on the effect of COVID-19. And most importantly, we should collaborate in continuing to maintain sanitary measures. Now, coming to question 2, which is what recovery and pre-existing practices need to be changed to ensure an inclusive and sustainable recovery. Well, for that, instead of throwing away used medical masks, we can collect them and recycle them. By doing so, we are contributing in stopping deforestation and moving towards a greener lifestyle. Moreover, this will result in creation of green jobs by recycling medical masks, plastic, tires, and other polluting items to create useful items. Lastly, to make proper use of technology, we can improve lifestyle of our country. For example, in health sector, we can implement digital medical record instead of using paper. And we can automate many processes at agricultural level. For example, make use of SCADA for irrigation purposes. Moving forward to the third question, which is on how do we ensure that all countries and communities can benefit from opportunities stemming from a sustainable and just transition. Firstly, I would say by improvising an income of vulnerable workers and small farmers. Secondly, by promoting the transition of low-carbon economy, which will lead to reduce the country's dependence on fossil fuels. And thirdly, equip workers and commuters with adequate skills and social protection. How? Well, by promoting effective models for equitable access to lifelong learning and for skill to be recognized and used more effectively. Lastly, by ensuring universal access and to comprehensive and adequate social protection. Now, I yield the floor to Ms. Bhavna to continue on the following question. Thank you.
Thank you, Adesh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, lecturers and dear friends. Now I will continue with the fourth question. How can we create better performing industries and supply chains for a just transition to more sustainable economies, Hybrid mode. During the pandemic, the online movement has made academics and the working sector more familiar at handling the technology and the digital age devices for lifelong learning and can now help students and the workers to learn and work virtually. We can also encourage the investment in the green transition. Now, which sectors are more critical? Moreover, there are some sectors that have been affected. The affected sectors are, firstly, the economy. COVID-19 has a bad effect on the accommodation and food services, textile and other manufacturing services. Sectors such as construction were affected because people were not working during lockdown. Furthermore, people were in a state of panic buying, where they were buying without considering their budget. People were stressed during the lockdown phase because they did not have any idea when the situation would be back to normal. Third, the resilience. Resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic, the poor were mostly touched because they had to purchase on a credit or seek help from kings. They had to buy cheaper food without considering about the hygiene. The community. COVID-19 had a negative impact on one of the important pillars of Mauritius, that is tourism sector, because borders were closed. There was restriction in traveling. Also, the tourism sector has been affected as there were no tourists. The airlines, restriction for traveling. Airline sector has been affected because many tourists were afraid to travel. Some action has been taken from the government, such as widespread support to vulnerable groups to maintain social peace and harmony. Government has provided recovery measures, such as wage assistance schemes. Now let's move to the fifth question. What are some of the commitments and responsible principles that has been made by the key industry sectors and by finance and investment institutions? Government has invested in training programs such as HADC, the National Training and Reskilling Scheme. Also, the mining and housing. To prevent further pandemic outbreaks, both global destruction of the natural habitat for unsustainable farming, mining and housing must move to sustainable pathways. Let's move to the last question. What are the decent green jobs of the future? What are the new skills needed? And what is needed from business, from government, and from academia? As per International Labour Office, green jobs that have reduced the environmental impact of enterprises and economic sector are in the agricultural sector. We have organic farming and sericulture jobs. Also, in the industrial sector, we have the recycling plants, technicians, and electric vehicle engineers as green jobs example. The skills that are required for future green jobs in business, government, and academia levels are quantification and monitoring of waste, energy, and water, the ability to raise awareness concerning environmental issues, and the attitude of willingness to learn about sustainability, respectively. Now let's move to the question for all. What kind of follow-up activities would you like to see from Stockholm? Some online quiz each week, just like the Ministry of Youth has done recently. They have done online quiz for several weeks where students were participating a lot. Also, more surveys about a sustainable planet. And they can also provide support and guidance and be more active socially. To conclude, let's take time to think about it. If the COVID-19 pandemic would not have hit the world, would people act in a responsible manner and move towards a more sustainable world? Before ending, I would like to thank my teams, which are from different faculties, such as management, engineering, and IT. They have done a great job during the past days. And also, let's not forget our three facilitators, Madame Bikari, Mr. Rajiv, and Madame Kolrati, for their support. Thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Questions from the floor? Okay. So if you don't have questions, maybe we can ask the next team. Thank you very much. So team 3, you can please cover the presentation.
Distinguished participants, a warm greeting to you all. I'm Ms. Kushiniran from GEMA 1. Me and Mr. Luis will be presenting the feedback on Leadership Dialogue 3 of Stockholm Plus 50. Firstly, addressing the first guiding question, focusing on challenges to implementation of SDGs, and second question, focusing on enabling environment. Regarding challenges, we have identified the following. Access to funding as a major impediment in implementation, increasing demography and its associated requirement in terms of resources. For instance, 16 to 24 hours of water supply will require additional 17 billion rupees. Supply of renewable energy to achieve nationally determined contribution. Additionally, more people means more waste being disposed of at our only landfill at Moshikos. Regarding enabling environment, create an environment policy or legal that enables conversion of waste to energy. The second guiding question addresses good practices and pathways for implementation. After discussion in the group, we identified the following. Regarding mitigation of climate change, upscale solar PV power generation to increase green electricity. Regarding adaptation, we have identified two major issues, rise in sea level, and secondly, the increased occurrence of flooding. And to address those burning issues, we are proposing more climate change adaptation program. For example, better consideration of stormwater management and treatment. We are suggesting a democratization of access to environmental information. This will help in better planning as well as in public acceptation of measures. Finally, we also suggest improved implementation focusing on sustainable consumption, production, and waste management, especially given that we in Mauritius have been having a significant footprint on environment. The third guiding question addresses means to transform governance and legal system. We have witnessed over years a number of projects announced in public out with little or no implementation. To address this, our first proposal is for relevant authorities to provide action plans with more detail and clear accountability, upscale enforcement of existing laws, and and promulgation of new updated ones, although not explicitly targeting governance and legal system, we suggest a significant increase in funding innovative projects as a means to transform governance system. Along the same idea of addressing innovation, we propose better frameworks to support these innovative projects. For example, having trained personnel for a new technology, improve coordination between local actors such as the private and public sector, promote a whole of society and people-centered approach. Thank you. I now yield the floor to Mr. Mathieu Luis.
Thank you, William. So I will introduce myself, Mr. Luis, and I will go straight forward to the fourth question: how to align public, private, and development finance with existing commitments and priorities. So if we look to find some measures, one way to analyze and to tackle the problem is to integrate a policy and a programming goal. The assessment is the first step to define a roadmap for our country to implement the SDGs. If we look at Mauritius, for example, a way for the public and private development finance to work together as a unit to achieve a green energy penetration in the energy mix of our country. For example, if we look at MCB uses solar panels to create electricity to run mainly third of the whole electricity users. So if we can implement this, if we can use this example to implement this into industries such as small restaurants who do not use a lot of electricity, this use of solar energy as a main source of electricity, then the excess can be bought by CEB to then redistribute to the country. This will mainly introduce a new way of thinking in terms of electricity energy and decrease the thermal stations work rate, thus less pollution, and a more sustainable way of working. In order to apply the priorities, we can achieve a sustainable development through investment in the drainage systems, public, private sector, and the development finance also. It can contribute to design an appropriate network of drainage systems which may pass in state lands or private lands. These incentives can implement and enable the implementation of the government projects for a better system of drainage. We can take examples, I think in 2011, when there was a major flood in Codon. All these damages was really costly for our country. So if we mainly relook these drainage systems and promote every sectors in the country to contribute into that, I think we will make a good progress in that sector. If we move forward to the fifth question, types of partnership from the UN and beyond needed to accelerate a green and sustainable economic transformation. To help small and medium enterprise, capacity building, which is the main term, provided by the UN in order to improve the local expertise, but in a sustainable manner. We can look also to the technology transfer. Mauritius, as we all know, is a developing country. We are getting aware of the technologies available in the world. We're getting in touch with all these technologies and we are applying little by little in our country. So if we introduce it into agriculture with a new and smart green ways of working such as permaculture, agrivoltaic, which can also mainly introduce new ways of energy contribution in our country, vertical culture, which is a very trending way of agriculture and very productive. If we formalize this in our country and form people to be aware of this technology available, which can be introduced to our country, I think agriculture can get a new punch into our sector, of agriculture. UN can also help us to develop a circular economy for a better management of our waste, which does have an economic value and can be returned back to the economic system. Example, we establish a local recycling system that can help improve the lifetime of some products. If we take an example of printers, which uses inkjet cartridges, long ago, the inkjet cartridges were reused and refilled by ink. Nowadays, they are just thrown away in the bin. This is contributing massively in pollution. So if our country can import big storage and containers of ink and then make a system for the users of printers to then take this ink back and reuse the cartridge, I think it can slowly participate in the sustainable development. If we take a look at the sixth question, capacities and technologies needed to improve human well-being in harmony with nature. First and foremost, if we look at our technologies, we look at energy management. Swarm logic, which is a new technology inspired by honeybee communication in harmony with nature, mainly applicable for businesses and companies and mainly infrastructures where swarm logic can help match energy demand and supply through the automatic monitoring and regulation of electronic devices and appliances. For example, we can look at the HVAC. For example, in this building, we have 2 indoor units of climatization. For example, if we apply this swarm logic into this room, the logic will calculate with an algorithm how much power is needed really to cool the room with how much people in the room. So if the logic will say we need more power, then it will introduce the other one to working at a certain rate. And if we doesn't need all this energy, we'll simply shut down this one. And this technology, this algorithm, which is created, as I just said, inspired by the honeybee communication, can be applied and implemented to many other electronic devices and appliances. So it's just a start. So we can look about that to see if we can use it. And if we look at the capacities to improve our well-being in the country, we can look how we can reframe and reinvent the agro-energetic sector by enhancing valuation of our agricultural system through the use of bioethanol through pharmaceutical and industrial products. It can be used as a source of biofuel in transportation in our country. As we all know, there are a lot of heavy vehicles in transportation in our country, and power production also. In addition to that, we're building a more greener environment for our country. We'll increase the amount of oxygen, so we will have a more breathable air, more healthy air, as I would say, for our next generation to come, building a more greener and healthier environment for our country. This will also help to reduce climate change and global warming. Thank you for your attention.
I'm coming back to address the 7th question regarding follow-up activities to Stockholm +50. So this is a tricky question, but one is to have a feedback of how our exercise today has made a contribution to implementation of relevant SDGs. We could have another session after Stockholm +50 as a debriefing forum and as a means to better involve us in post-Stockholm +50 projects. Thank you for your attention.
Do you have any questions, please? Yes.
I will see if I can answer.
Hello.
Yes. Concerning the closed hall, what measures are needed to align public and private sectors? Does the public sector and the private sector need to work hand in hand, or they can work separately to cover the existing commitments and priorities?
Very good question. So, as we all know, mainly in our country, the private sector will put their hands in some projects if they can get something in return. Because the government power will get money from taxes and you know, how much money after we work, they take some tax from our money we get from our jobs. The private sector doesn't work that way. So for them to introduce into a project, they have to get something in return. So they can work in both ways. So I would say it's better for them to work separately, but having a union, but not mainly entering too much into the program, because it's better for them to work as a private, as we own the private sector is the name, so that if there is a problem into government, they can continue their work straightforward. So it's not affecting them. That's one advantage we got. So we have to keep that in this way, and mixing everything will be a problem because it will impact everything. It's like an outlet that can be used in case of a danger.
Okay, thank you.
I think I did answer your question.
Yes, you did.
I think your question was, do they need to work in terms of the collective action that I think was spoken about here?
Do they have to work in hand or not separately? That was my question. He answered.
I think Dr. Udu wants to add something. Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's actually a very good question. And
can you switch on the mic?
Sure.
Yes.
You hear me now? Oh, I go with it. It's a very good question because, I mean, one thing you need to know, private sector would not engage in anything if it's not profitable. And there are some technologies where it's not profitable right now. So it's up for government to create frameworks to make business sense for the private sector. So there are technologies at different stages of maturation of development. So for some, you need a strong involvement of government. In others, government needs to take a step back and let the private sector make what it does best, making money. So it depends on the technology. So, and by all means, you can't work alone in an absolute sense. There needs to be some kind of mix. Leaving the private sector alone doing things, you get abuse very often. And you need government to police things. And leaving government alone, there won't be any money. I mean, government doesn't make money. It uses money for common good, like Sanju was explaining earlier. So it's a mix of stuff.
I'll just slightly add quickly on that. I think that, yes, your question is interesting in the sense that private sector do invest in a lot of projects, but I think government needs to be a facilitator, because government, being the policymaker, needs to facilitate the way businesses are carried out. Because at the end of the day, as you yourself said, Luis mentioned it, if it is not profitable, no private sector will be interested in investing in any kind of project. But then government has to have a long-term vision. And as at date, I'm not very sure how long our vision is in Mauritius. So do we have a vision towards 2030? Do we have a vision, let's forget about 2050 for example, 2030, do we have a vision? What are the different scenarios that we are envisaging? And how will government policy help in achieving those goals? So I think they have to work hand in hand. This is my belief. And not only government and private sector, I mean government, private sector, and the public. We all have to be part of it, because at the end of the day, I think this was mentioned this morning by Miss Tanzila, who talked about this collective action, which was taken up by Sanju afterwards. And this collective action really needs all of us to, because climate change does not choose. And sustainable development is not, because long time before, when we used to talk about sustainable development, People used to only talk about sustainable development in terms of energy. But today we understand that this is not only something that concerns energy, although in our discussion today, we're having a lot of emphasis on energy production, but it touches everything. You know, even in the sustainable, in the faculty of management, today we have launched a master in sustainable business management, which by itself shows that it is something that encompasses all the different faculties. So I believe that there has to be collaboration. And furthermore, I will add, maybe we want government to be in a better place to make policy. This is where we, academics, the academia has to come in to be, you know, the interface between science and policy making. Because policy cannot just be made by people who are elected in office every 5 years. It has to be guided by people who are, you know, behind the scene doing the sciences. People who are, you know, like all of you here, through your projects, through the different theses, through all the research that is going on in academia. Thank you.
Yes, can I?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to add something about, you know, private sector and investment in projects. You will hear very often the word innovative financing. It's not easy sometimes to understand what is innovative financing. And maybe one or two examples can help. Even I took some time to when you read. Let's take, for example, you have 100 million that you want to finance small farmers or a group of entrepreneurs like that. And there's always a risk that you will not get all your money back because some will default, will not be able to pay. And usually what happens in finance is the higher the risk, the higher the interest. So those people who don't have the means, they don't have the money, they have to pay the higher interest. Then comes in something called, maybe the government, or it can be some other body, but very often, we create something called de-risking this financing. Now, how do you eliminate the risk? Let's say it is estimated that 3% would be the default, or 4%. I take some example, right? Now, if the government comes with 4 million rupees and give that financing body, say, look, I put this as a guarantee, you will get it, don't worry, give your loans freely so more people are accessible. Now what happened is that the investment body, they know the risk has come down and they can provide the finance more easily. So this is an example. You have it in insurance also. Maybe you can have an insurance. Another example, which is more practical right now, this is happening. I don't know how many of you have heard about SunRef. SunRef, AFD is giving loans. And they give refund, or what do you call it? They top up. Right? You have a project. I mean, there's a lot of conditions with it. But let's say there's not 50,000 euros, something minimum. There are different categories. And if you're doing, I think, mitigation project, you get a 5%. You are able to achieve minimum something like 10 or 15% reduction in energy use. Or in adaptation, you get 10 to 15%, you know, what they call kickback. Earlier it was much more. Huh? I think it started around 2013. So sometimes it's not that easy to understand what happened, but you run a project, you do the feasibility study, and what you find is that my project, based on this set of, especially when you talk adaptation, no, in mitigation, you can sell energy and you get back money. Or you create energy efficiency, you energy saving, you get back money. in adaptation is more difficult because you don't have a cash flow usually associated with this. So when you do your project and you find that, for example, I want to do rainwater harvesting, or I want to do agriculture with irrigation-based technology, computer control, greenhouse and all, but then I don't break even by so much. And when you submit the project to AFP and you find that it can benefit from that, the amount that you get back now makes your project become profitable. And that's how a number of projects are being carried out. You know, some of the things are simple. We have an area which is being flooded. We usually think of a lot of build technology, right? And it seems a lot of French people are coming with creating trenches to capture the water. And the trenches are not in cement. The trenches can be just dig in and put rocks in that. Now, when the water goes in, because of the soil is porous, the water will be. And when you have flash flood like this, these water are a certain amount, and there's a lot of cost of. And these, well, it can be expensive in terms of creating it, but if you can demonstrate that you are taking care of flash flood, for example, and reducing the impacts of it, and you get the subsidy from there, the project becomes interesting. So these are some examples. I hope it helps you to understand about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all the three teams. I think you have really enriched, today's discussion, today's workshop, with all the different ideas that you have presented to us today. I'd just like to make some concluding remarks before we end today's workshop. I think it's very clear. There's one group that asked a question at the end, I think it was your group, about whether without COVID-19 would have been envisaging or been talking about sustainable development. I believe that all of us sitting here, we have gone through almost like 2 years of pandemic, and we always talk about the negative side of the pandemic. But for once, let us talk about the positive side of it. I think that COVID-19 has helped us take a leap in all that we do, in all our daily activities. I will take the example of this university. We have been, having so many trainings, so many times we have been asking people, you have to start going online. You have to start doing some virtual teaching. And we know, people being people, we are very reluctant to change. And there has been always impediments that, going online, this will not be easy, it will not serve the purpose, people won't be able to follow. But since we were obliged, we were, in a situation we didn't have any other alternative, we had to go online. I remember people didn't even know about Zoom. Most of the people, I think, sitting here in this room did know about Zoom before 2020. Okay, some of us were using it in very rare cases, but you have seen how quickly we have been able to adapt. And I think we, as a society, we are able to adapt to those situations. But we need to have the proper, environment. There has to be fire first, then we'll see how we can extinguish it. Because if there is no fire, just like you, I know, if there is no exams, you will not study. So we need to get that kind of constraint. And I think COVID-19 has proven to be very positive in that. Because it has shown to us how vulnerable we are in terms, of a society. In terms of communication, we had so many tools in our hand, social media and all, but we were only using it for, entertainment purposes.
But today, I know all of you are using all these social media platforms, not only for entertainment. Today it's being used for business, it's being used for teaching, it's being used for sharing, and it has, I will tell you, a personal experience. Today, I don't even have one single handout in paper that I give to my students. So you can see how things are changing, how much more information we are able to channel in a very much more efficient way. So this is one thing I wanted to tell you about COVID-19, my personal experience. The second thing is, I think there was many of you talked about food security. You know, in this country, we are prone to cyclones. And if we didn't have Batsirai, I think most of you would have never seen a cyclone before. Most of you sitting here in this room, you know. But in our generation, we were used to cyclone. And we had instincts. We knew that during the cyclonic season, there were certain things that we had to do. There were always, you know, we always prepared for that. And as my mother would say, you know, we always had rice, we always had soap, oil, sugar, and salt. All these things were basic amenities which we always had. But today, since we have supermarkets everywhere, we normally don't keep anything at home. So we only buy them when we need them, right or not? And that is a panic that was created. When there was a lockdown, everyone was so afraid. How are we going to live? We don't even have 1 kilogram of rice in store. But these are things that we knew. Our grandparents knew it because they were used to these cyclones. And today you have gone through 2 cyclones, and you know, these were very, how would I say, reclam. It's not even cyclone. What we got was only reclam. And you would understand that we had so many things that we had forgotten. The way we build our houses, the way we secure our houses, and the same way we need to be secured as far as food is concerned. And I think one thing that I didn't hear today, but I think is important to consider, is Mauritius is an island, yes, but we form part of a very big community, which is known as the SADC, you know, which comprises of more than 700 million people. And if we look at Mauritius only for being able to be self-sufficient in food, maybe that will be very challenging. But we must not forget, we have so many countries around us. Madagascar is here, Africa is there. So how can we, on the regional, you know, scene, how can we collaborate? So this is something I think very important that we have touched on today is food security. And thirdly, I think you all talked about it, is health. And how our health is so connected with everything that we do. The way that we work, the stress that we get from work. We have all started working from home. And today we know that sometimes it's better to be in the office than being at home. Yes or no? The way that we eat pesticides in our food. The way that the air that we inhale, which is, you know, stuffed with all these carbon dioxide and all the smoke coming out from the vehicles and our power production. So this was just to, you know, un petit résumé de ce qu'on a vu aujourd'hui. So, but I think it was a very interesting and enriching session. So what I'm requesting is that everything that you have written, I think, was very good ideas, that you now put it in a way so that Mr. Desha doesn't have a colossal job, because he has to, you know, compile a report by the 25th of this month, I think so. So it will be very much appreciated. We will appreciate it a lot if by tomorrow you can send it to Supriti. All of you has an email address, or you can send through your facilitator, which, by the way, I'm going to thank today. So we had Dr. Dripol, Abdel Moudaou, Norma Vikari, who has left us already, Bushra, Ziad Boudou, Jay Doga, who have done a wonderful job since last week. They have been working with you, and I think that has given you also a lot of information to be able to share. So thank you very much, all of you, all the students who have taken your time. I know some of you have come here. And I would like also to thank all our colleagues from the UNDP, so who have given us a very good helping hand today, in monitoring the whole program. But I think I have to, thank all the team here at the UdM. So starting from Supriti, Priyanta, Vikar, who has been helping us a lot in, putting all the logistic so that this becomes a success today. And everyone, all the team, Payen, Ramen, and all, I don't know whether they are here, they are hearing me. So Alain and so on, they have all helped to make this a success. So thank you very much. I will request Mr. Desha, maybe you have a few words to say before we end this session. Yes.
Yes, before we come to the thank you, one or two announcements. I won't repeat it. I will read the notes very rapidly, so thank you. And make sure it's up to the best and condense, and I trust you for that, and I trust your team. To carry on the conversation, the discussion, what we do in UNDP, there's a website called Spark Blue, probably find here. The new generation, you're very familiar with all these codes. So if you scan it, it can take you directly there. Or if you hit Stockholm +50 Spark Blue, but somewhere you need Mauritius to come in. I trust you will find it. And so we post, every time we have a consultation, we write a small article, very short, and with some photographs that you put it. So that's the first thing would be good for you, go and see it. But more and more, we're going to put in a few, we can't put everything that you say, but we'll put in maybe a few quotes pour déclencher une discussion. Donc, and you could see maybe what the people said about gender and about youth and other, right? So I trust you will do that et vous pouvez alimenter un peu cette discussion because you're very familiar with it, you're good partners for us. That's one. Then number two, there's a very simple survey which is called a global survey. You have 10 questions. Again, yeah, the name of the survey is State of the Planet, Global Public Survey. And, or even if you go on Google and you say Stockholm +50 Global Survey. Wait. Okay. It's already circulated by WhatsApp also, so that will be coming, but if you want to go direct. Now, the interesting thing about this global survey, there are 10 questions, but the 9 questions of them is multiple choice, so very easy. But usually they'll ask you about gender and maybe age group, right? Because they're collecting it. I think in Mauritius, we can do pretty well. We don't administer this survey, Stockholm, but I hope we'll get the results from them in terms of number of people and the breakdown of what is said. But what I'm trying to do, I mean, the university, the UNDP team, with the help of all of the stakeholders that we're doing, if we can have more people participate in this survey, it will be at least an example of how the Stockholm +50 messages are being passed, people are aware. Now, we are a very small population, so obviously all the bigger countries probably will have more people, but if you look at it per capita, maybe we could do pretty well. So when I say you, it's maybe to the university, to your own WhatsApp group, to your own colleagues. If it is okay for you, you could share it with the other, because, you know, everything is online, so you have a big database. I think that would create a good impact, and also you would have the feeling you would have given your own answers to this, and we'll see what the results come out. So education is a sector where almost everybody, even young children, are now doing online learning. So thank you for promoting this. Only the last question requires you to write something, but you can always write 2 words if you don't want. But if you want, you can put some comments. So spark good discussion and global survey, right? And now it's time to say thank you, because lunch is waiting for us. There's so many to thank. I would start. I think it clicked very well when first UNDP made the request to UdM, and Dr. Kandan, somehow, I don't know, you were asked to contact me, but the current has been flowing very well. Thank you, Dr. Kandan. We had a lot of phone calls, meetings, and all to have what we have today. And I imagine behind that, there's so much work that you have done. It was really surprising to find that you already had, in fact, a rehearsal discussion, so today went very well. Thank you for that, and thank you for UdM, all your students, the whole staff, your director, and other supporting staff for making this possible. So I'll say big clap for the UdM. And we're also pretty pleased with the work that you're doing, the presentation that you have, and we hope that there'll be more collaboration between UNDP and even the ministry and UdM is a good example you're setting, and we wish you all the good luck for all your endeavors. Then, of course, we have the UNDP team, communication team, other people who are not here. It takes a lot of time to do this work, right? And at the same time, I think it's good. Some people get interested, but what UNDP is doing, maybe you can have a career. So we also welcome you to read a bit more about UNDP, and not necessarily only UNDP, but it can be UN agencies or what we call development partners and so on. Today, definitely, sustainability is becoming something important, and we would say even people who are doing finance, or whether you're doing biology, or whether you're doing sociology, it's good to have a good knowledge about sustainability. It will definitely help you, right? And then, of course, we have the Ministry of Environment. Mr. Mego is here. We're working together and to implement the Stockholm project. So thanks to everybody, and have a good lunch outside. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Last thing before we leave for lunch, we have proposed to prepare a certificate of attendance for all of you who have attended today, especially all the students. So make sure that your names are properly written. When you go out, you check the registration list which was there at the entrance. Make sure that all your names are properly written. If there are any corrections, do not hesitate to mention it to Sukriti or to Priyanta. So on that note, so again, thank you very much. And we have seen that this has been a very good success. And we are hoping that now, since we have already been able to get students from Pamplemousse and Rosil to work together, so we'll not stop here. All right? So I hope all of you agree with that. So we'll not stop here. In the context of the Hccp, we are definitely going to have meetings like this on maybe other thematics, and I will invite you to please continue to collaborate and participate in those. So thank you very much, and have a good lunch, so outside.